I've said it before and I'll say it again. Trump's tariff diplomacy is, at least in large part, about free speech, and the US government is making no secret about that. In fact, they are practically screaming it from the rooftops, and yet somehow the Australian government, amongst others, seem unable or more likely unwilling to hear them. US Vice President JD Vance said it to the UK Prime Minister Kier Starmer in their spectacular Oval Office showdown a few months ago, in which Starmer laughably claimed that the UK protects freedom of speech, something which Vice President Vance said would be a topic of conversation later that afternoon, i.e., free speech will be a part of the free trade negotiations. That message didn't seem to get through. Prime Minister Kier Starmer and in fact the rest of the world's leaders still don't seem to get the memo. So, Secretary of State Marco Rubio reiterated it in the form of sending a delegate from the State Department to meet with a UK Right to Life activist, Livia Tosici-Bolt, after she was prosecuted by the UK government for the crime of silently holding a sign offering to speak with anyone who was considering having an abortion. The US government made it abundantly clear that they were concerned about freedom of speech and were taking an interest in her case specifically. This was no mere lip service to the concept of free speech. The US State Department were willing to get their hands dirty. And still, world's leaders did not understand this very simple and very blunt message: free speech or else. So Secretary of State Marco Rubio has tried again, just a few days ago, this time calling out the EU, the UK and Australia by name. Now, this is a significant diplomatic intervention given that here in Australia we've just had a federal election and our returned Prime Minister, Anthony Albanese, is continuing into his second term. This is a message to him. The US government is putting him and us on notice, and given that the clock is ticking on the 90-day moratorium on these heavy tariffs that were promised by Trump, our leaders had better smarten up fast. My name's Topher Field. This is the Topher Project, and I help busy people like you to keep up with the world as it changes around you. I am 100% viewer supported. So, if you'd like to keep seeing more of this sort of content, then head over to goodpeoplebreakbadlaws.com and grab my books, my DVDs, my t-shirts and hoodies, and you'll be helping me to keep doing what I do. Now, US Secretary of State Marco Rubio could not have been more blunt, saying via the State Department, and I quote, "The Department of State is deeply concerned about efforts by governments to coerce American tech companies into targeting individuals for censorship. Freedom of expression must be protected, online and offline. Examples of this conduct are troublingly numerous. EU Commissioner Thierry Breton threatened X for hosting political speech. Turkey fined Meta for refusing to restrict content about protests, and Australia required X to remove a post criticising an individual for promoting gender ideology. Even when content may be objectionable, censorship undermines democracy, suppresses political opponents, and degrades public safety. The United States opposes efforts to undermine freedom of expression. As Secretary Rubio said, our diplomacy will continue to place an emphasis on promoting fundamental freedoms." End quote. Here's the thing. I think the likes of Prime Minister Kier Starmer and Anthony Albanese and the leaders of the EU are making a mistake in thinking that this free speech issue is a separate issue to the economic impact of tariffs and free trade. They think that if they can offer a good enough economic deal on trade, then the issue of free speech will be set aside and will not have any more bearing on the outcome of the free trade negotiations, because in their worldview, these are separate issues and the free speech side of things just isn't that important. But they're wrong. President Trump, Vice President JD Vance, and our Secretary of State Marco Rubio are all in unison, telling them in plain and simple terms, these tariff negotiations are about basic freedoms, including and especially freedom of speech. You want a trade deal? Stop censoring your people, and at the very least, stop censoring them on social media platforms which are owned by Americans. The Australian E-Safety Commissioner, who is, ironically, the American very disgruntled former Twitter employee Julie Inman Grant, believes that she has the right to censor the entire internet. This is illustrated perfectly by the fact that she issued a takedown notice for a social media post written by a Canadian, Billboard Chris, on an American social media platform, X. So the Australian government actually thinks that it has the right to censor the entire world if it, in its exclusive opinion, decides that it should. Now, that is a laughable position for a place like Australia to hold, but it also shows both contempt for human rights as well as a complete failure to comprehend the internet. But these deeply unserious people are very serious about their power, so they don't plan on backing down anytime soon. The E-Safety Commissioner said of Billboard Chris's post about a transgender activist that his words posted to X were, and I quote, intended to have an effect of serious harm, end quote. But defining mere words as any form of harm, much less serious harm, is a deeply unserious thing to say. Anti-free speech activists love to claim that words are violence, but never in history has anyone ever been punched in the pronouns. Somehow, we've gone from saying sticks and stones may break my bones, but names will never hurt me, to having government departments protecting people from the serious harm of being talked about in a way that they don't like. Now, they can play silly games if they want, but while they're playing their silly games, the clock is ticking on Trump's 90-day tariff pause. We are approaching the 30-day mark already, and while the media are keen to argue that it's Trump who's under pressure to make deals, and fast, nothing could be further from the truth. Trump has the popular support of the American people, whether you like it or not. And the US is better placed than most countries to be just fine, despite a slowdown in global trade. Now, that's not to say that it won't hurt, or that it wouldn't force massive changes to take place. I'm not saying that it's a good thing. Tariffs aren't. But I'm saying that America is pretty uniquely placed to make the changes that become necessary, so it will be able to deal with and adjust to these tariffs better than pretty much anybody else in the world. So if Kier Starmer and Anthony Albanese think that they can outweight Trump, that they can run down the clock, and that Trump will be under pressure and sooner or later Trump will come begging for a trade deal, free speech or not, well, that's fantasy. And there is a harsh reality check coming their way. Trump isn't playing, and his tariff diplomacy is not a bluff. It's free speech or else. I've been saying it for months, and I'll keep saying it because it's true. No one gets a good trade deal if they're trying to censor the internet. And if our leaders still don't understand that, after Trump, Vance, and Rubio have all reiterated it and made it so obvious that I've now made multiple videos about it, then that is their own stupid fault, but sadly will be the ones who pay the price. TikTok, 2 months to go before we either get some free speech back or we get slapped with some severe tariffs. My name's Topher Field. This is the Topher Project, and I help busy people like you to keep up with the world as it changes around us. And if you'd like me to keep making content like this, then please head over to goodpeoplebreakbadlaws.com and grab a copy of my books, Good People Break Bad Laws, which is about civil disobedience in the modern age, Good Christians Break Bad Laws, which is about the theology of civil disobedience and why it should be Christians who are the first to stand up against government gone bad, plus the DVD of my multi-award-winning documentary, Battleground Melbourne. There's my t-shirts, including this one. This is one of my favorites, which is also available as a hoodie in black or in white. And there's also my Getting Your Head in the Game masterclass and so much more. So head over to goodpeoplebreakbadlaws.com, grab anything that catches your eye, and you'll be helping me to keep doing what I do. Also, and I don't usually mention this, but I've had a few people ask, if you already own my books and you want to keep supporting me, or if you just want to make a donation rather than buying something, I do have a buy me a coffee option on my website, which is topherfield.net. Now, that website is in desperate need of a complete makeover. Please don't judge me. It's old. I'm hoping to get to that makeover later this year, but we'll see. But if you look around the homepage of that website, topherfield.net, you'll find where you can join my email list so I can keep in touch with you even if I get censored online. And you'll also find the Buy Me a Coffee button, which is a donation via PayPal if you'd like to. I really appreciate all of your support, and I appreciate you watching this video to the end. You are enabling me to keep doing what I love, which is making these videos and helping people like you to stay free.